Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, race fans alike, supercars fans alike, and welcome to the MotorMotion E-Series. We are back for Shawfire V8 Supercars Series. It is Season 2. Round 2 now comes with the Johnson lobby, and we're going to be going live momentarily, but we are at Kyoto. We're in Japan, folks. We're going to be going to Yamagiwa. It's a brilliant circuit. It's lovely out there at this time of year, and from the commentary box, of course, it is our absolute pleasure to be bringing you tonight's lobby, which is going to be Johnson lobby. It's a little delayed broadcast going on here tonight. We'll also bring you the Richards lobby results a little bit later on in the series. We've got a bunch of information to go through, but first of all, I want to introduce your team in the commentary box tonight. That is myself, George Cooke, and of course the legendary Andrew Scott, known as Ando747. Mate, I think this might be the first time you're in the commentary box here at MotorMotion E-Series. How are you doing tonight?
Konnichiwa, George. Good to see you, mate. And good day, everyone. Yeah, I'm really excited. It's been a while for me, actually. I've done a little bit of commentary before with you and Nick, but I'm happy to fill in. Nick's obviously busy this weekend for whatever reason, and just happy to be here for sure. I'm really excited.
It's going to be a brilliant, brilliant race. And of course, I believe you are, in fact, racing in this series as well. You're a team owner, Kooke Driver Development Team, which has been doing incredibly well in the likes of the TCR Season 1, which, of course, is returning. TCR Season 2 coming in, I believe, starting next week. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing what your team and all the drivers and other teams on the grid are going to be able to do. And tonight, we've got a great little show for you. Kyoto Driving Park, Yamagiwa, here in Japan. So indeed, konnichiwas all around to everyone out there. I hope everyone's doing good. Genki desu ka? Nonetheless, we don't know much more Japanese than that, I don't think, but
Domo arigato.
Oh, there we go. Domo arigato. Yeah, that's right. Not too bad. I recall some pretty embarrassing experience I've had in Japan trying to speak the language in front of a crowd of people. I got shuffled on stage. We'll recount that lovely story later on, though. I'm sure you've got plenty of stories doing what you do. But time of day today, late morning. Got racing softs only today as well. 4.352 kilometers at this wonderful circuit, 15 turns. We'll go through a bit more information in a bit. But yeah, as we said, tonight we've got the Johnson lobby. It's one of our favorites. We were here last week with Nick Pautasso, which was an absolute pleasure. Now, of course, having you here, Andrew, it's going to be a very interesting experience because we've had a driver and a team owner, and now another driver and a team owner, and I've been looking forward to having you on the stream for a while, so good to have you here. Welcome in to everyone in chat, MotorMotion Media, Motion Media I should say, always make that mistake, and Super V2 2000, that's Monica Caballari. Welcome into stream, lovely to have you here today. Of course, I do want to do a little bit of advertising for MotorMotion because we've got a wonderful website, wonderful team backing us here in this fantastic Gran Turismo 7 League, and a big shout out to all those in the background organising things, which I believe you're one of those people.
Yes, I've been involved with the boys for a bit. We do a little bit of stewarding here. I do a fair bit with this Supercars series now, so sort of chief of parity and testing, I guess you could call me.
Ooh, that's going to be a tough job, but I know that you've got the chops to do that. That's parity testing. It's going to be pretty tricky. You've got two kinds of cars, of course. In the Shawfire Supercars Series, we've got the Ford Mustangs and the Chevrolet Camaros, so that's probably pretty difficult to balance them out. But from what I hear, the parity is now down to tenths of a second.
Yeah, like in all my testing, they're within a tenth, so they've both got their strengths and weaknesses, but overall lap time, they're quite similar. One car might have a slight little edge, but we won't tell you which one that is.
Good. Yeah, we know that we need to keep those secrets under wraps. So, of course, for tonight's proceedings, it is round 2 here in the Johnson lobby. We are a week delayed, actually, or 2 weeks delayed, but round 2 it is at Yamagiwa in Japan. We've got a 20-minute sprint coming up for you shortly, followed by a 40-minute race. So that's 13 laps and 26 laps respectively. Of course, as you can see there, we were expecting to have Nick Pautasso today, but he is busy. He's got prior engagements, and that's why we have the legendary Andrew Scott in the comms box with us today. As we said before, they had 10 minutes of qualifying. Because this is a delayed broadcast, we won't be able to bring you qualifying live. But nonetheless, we do have a results screen to take you through it. Of course, here, the home of Gran Turismo is MotorMotion E-Series. Make sure you check us out on the website, www.motormotioneseries.wordpress.com. There are some seriously good articles over there. We've got a Discord community, but most of this happens on Facebook. So make sure you join us in the MotorMotion E-Series paddock on Facebook. And of course, if you're enjoying the stream tonight, give us a like and a subscribe. It always really helps us out. And yeah, we're really appreciative for everyone who's going to join in and view tonight's lobby. Looking forward forward to it very much. Of course, we've mentioned who we are. So George Cooke and Andrew Scott in the commentary box tonight. So we're going to go over straight to qualifying results before we jump into race 1. No further ado is needed at all, and this is the qualifying results for the Johnson Lobby. Of course, the lobby actually happened last Tuesday, or this Tuesday, I suppose, from this week. So here's the results. We've got Dean van der Zandt. He's managed for CP Motorsport to take P1, pole position. Really, really good stuff there from him. Matthew Joynson for Juice Motorsport will take P2. Then in P3, it is Nielsen for Whiplash Motorsport. That is Monica Camilleri's new team, a new team joining us for the Supercars Series. Then we've got Crow, also known as Bird, which we'll see a few times on the track for Colin Racing Team. And then we've got Richard Robinson from RSR Robo Motorsport. So for that's his username, sorry, for Road Sick Racing. We've got Alexander for Mikuga Driver Development, a name that I'm sure, Ando, you are most familiar with.
Yes, sir.
Indeed, yeah. We've got Mead there for Mad Turtle Racing, taking out P7 on the grid, and P8 will go to Williamson for Scarborough Motorsport. DP Mario for Hasseldine Automotive will take P9, Wakefield and P10. We've got Aidan Sampson there for Diffusion Race Engineering and P11, and Chris White, of course, for P12, in P12 for Gridline Racing. And then Matt Kutcher, P13 for Black Rose Racing, and rounding out the grid tonight will be Troy Britnell for Hoon Corp Esports, another new team on the grid. We've got a bunch of new teams on the grid. In fact, I think we've got the Mash Spuds Racing as well. So a whole bunch of new teams coming to the Supercars Series, which is absolutely awesome to see. So, Andrew, I think it might just be time to jump out on track and see if these cars are ready. So I'm just looking at the comms box right now. Yeah, I see cars on the grid. Do you see cars on the grid?
Let's do it, mate. I'm ready to go. I can see him.
Excellent. Okay, here we go, folks. We're going to jump in now, and I will count us down into the lights as well. We're about to go down. Let's just get this all correct here. This is always the tricky part. Doing the broadcast. There we go. We're going to hit the button, and here we are. We're into race 1. It is 2 lights, 3 lights, 4 lights, 5 lights. We're pausing, and we are green for round 2 at Yamagiwa for the MotorMotion E-Series Supercar Series. And a good start there from Nielsen. Matthew Joynson is going on the inside into turn 1, but backs out of it. Dean van der Zandt gets a very, very good start there. Excellent stuff from these races, keeping it nice and clean on this sweeping left-hander into turn 1. Of course, this has just been sort of, it's a new circuit, let's just put it that way. It's a new circuit in GD7. It's nice and fresh. It's a really high-speed circuit. Matthew Joynson putting a heck of a lot of pressure on the back of Dean van der Zandt, who's gotten away very nicely. And we've got Nielsen and Birdman in P3 and P4. That's just switched around because here we go. They're right into it. They are right into it. And Birdman for Colin Motorsport has gotten up ahead of the Whiplash Motorsport driver in Nielsen. And look at the front end of those cars flying up. It is absolutely brilliant to watch. And through the chicane sort of area, the S's for the first time in the first lap, 13 laps to go in this 20-minute sprint. And what a start that was.
Nice clean start there, and we've got the usual suspects up the front, and good to see a clean getaway from everyone.
Yeah, we just had a big, big send there. I'm trying to find out who that was from. I think that was from Robinson. Tried to send it on the Mikuga Driver Developer driver ahead of Alexander, but Alexander widely backed out and managed to figure out where that car was going to end up, which was quite wide in the corner. So done well there for himself. Stays in P5 at this moment. Bruce the Shark there for Mad Turtle Racing is now in P6. Followed by the Scarborough Motorsport driver, Booster Blake there. We've got Old Wakey here, or known as Old Wakey, Captain Snooze, an absolute legend for Mashed Spuds Racing in P8, Aidan Sampson, Diffusion Race Engineering P9, and Matt Kutcher in P10. So that's how it goes for the top 10 at this moment. But there we go. So Dean van der Zandt continues to lead us away, and I apologize for the notifications coming up on the screen. I haven't put my Do Not Disturb sign on, unfortunately, so I'll get that sorted for the next part of the race here. But good start here from the Ford Mustang driver of Dean van der Zandt. Behind him, of course, is another Ford, I believe, unless I'm completely mistaken about that, which I might be.
Looks like a Ford.
Yeah, looks like it's the duck test, isn't it? Duck typing test. Does it look like a Ford? Does it sound like a Ford? Then it must be a Ford.
And it's out the front, so it's probably a Ford at this stage.
Yeah, that's very true, very true. A little bit of action happening here between Nielsen and Birdman currently. So Colin Motorsport Racing and the Whiplash Motorsport drivers going at it for that third position spot. Of course, we do have a reverse grid for the second race in the season. That's very wide for Nielsen, very wide for the Whiplash Motorsport driver. Also, I believe, in the Ford Mustang. So the Whiplash Motorsport team will be looking to continue their run of good results. They had a brilliant time out last time at Dragon Trails, which is a very tricky track. What's, in your experience here, Andrew, what's the kind of difference between those two tracks? They've obviously got a lot of high-speed sections, a lot of high-speed straights. Is there a distinct difference? Is there a lot different that you do with the setup at a track like this?
Yeah, a little bit. This track tends to be a little bit more flowing, and you still want maximum downforce in both cars, though, I believe. So they're similar, but just very different tracks visually, but similar setup you're going to use for them. Yeah. Yeah,
very, very true. Yeah, so as we've seen a lot of different setups on the grid around, mostly around sort of angles of the rear, how much, that's very, 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 very wild there for Nielsen, but he is actually going purple, ironically. We've seen a lot of different sort of philosophies in terms of the setup, some running higher rake on the cars, some, running a bit more downforce, some with less downforce. And we've seen a big difference in terms of the tire usage around there as well. Is that something that, needs to be kept in mind as you do a track like this?
Absolutely. It's always a compromise whenever you're tweaking the setup. So what you gain in one spot, you're probably giving back away somewhere else. So it's all a preference and a choice that you have to make. And you can give away some straight line speed with max downforce, but you will save on tires, and that's a critical thing in this race today.
Too right, yeah. I mean, it's a tire killer. It really is, this track, especially those sweeping left-handers around the back of the circuit, and the first turn, of course. Very tricky corners to get right. And if you don't get them right, you will slide. And if you slide, you're going to burn your tires. If you burn your tires, you're going to run out of them. And 13 laps here, we saw last time at Dragon Trails that a lot of cars didn't really make it, securely to the end of the race.
Yes.
Yeah, fuel-wise, it was fine, but tires was totally different.
Yes, those blasted series organisers, they make the races just that annoying length where you can't really afford to just go flat out for the whole race. You've got to think about tyres and also think about fuel, actually, a little bit. The refuel rate here at this race is a lot lower, so fuel is expensive this round. So although you can do well over 13 laps on a tank, in race 2, you're going to want to think about not wasting too much time in the pits refueling.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. That'll come into play in race 2, where we do have 26 laps. Most of these drivers in this lobby shouldn't have to come into the pits at all for this first race. And as I said, cheeky organisers, they like to make it a little bit of a challenge, though, don't they? I mean, it's no fun if you can just drive flat out with. Well, maybe there is a bit of fun in that, actually, now that I think about it. But nonetheless, it's much more fun for us in the commentary box watching these guys and girls struggle on tyres towards the end of 13 laps. And speaking of which, we are 4 laps in at the moment. Your top 5 as it stands right now, Dean van der Zandt followed by Matthew Joynson. Those two are getting very close at the top. Then we've had this battle going on between Nielsen and Birdman for a whole bunch of laps as it stands. Then we've got Alexander from Cooke Drive Development down in 5th position. Down the rest of the grid, it's a bit spread out, I have to admit. So there's a distinct difference going on between a lot of the drivers going around the grid. But Aiden Sampson's got Bruce the Shark from Mad Turtle Racing on the back of him at the minute. So he's gonna got to keep that car going. The Diffusion Race Engineering one is a unique one. They run a very, very high rake on that Camaro. And I'm not 100% sure why that is. We discussed that last week, and I'm not 100% sure why. Maybe you can give us some insights into maybe why that car is configured so differently.
Yeah, it does change the behaviour of the car a little bit. It helps the car rotate through corners. So it's a driving style thing more than anything, but also combined with some other settings like suspension stiffness and whatnot, you can get it to ride the curbs a bit better. You can get it to get the power down a little bit better. So it's a personal choice, and I've seen a few teams actually running that very high rake setup.
Yeah, true. I think that there is definitely a couple of others running the high rake as well. I think the one that stands out to me, of course, is the Kiwi team, because I am a Kiwi, so maybe I'm a little bit biased here. That's probably the case, isn't it? Nonetheless, just going around the grid, we do have 8 laps remaining in this race, and fastest lap at the moment being set by Dean van der Zandt, who is out to a fantastic lead at the top. Mash Spuds Racing, Captain Stu's here. That is Wakey. Doing a good job down. He's still in the top 10 at the minute. Looks like he's picked up maybe a bit of damage on the front of that car, which does get repaired automatically, but he'll be getting chased down by Boosted Blake here of Scarborough Motorsport. Chris White coming through as well. So back of the grid looking fairly spread out at this stage. I think there must have been an incident there between Robinson and Troy Britnell, because Troy Britnell has got a very broken front of that car. It doesn't look particularly happy, does it?
No, not at all. So there must have been a little coming together there. There's a few cars with damage at the back, actually. And I think that the damage might be set to heavy this round. That is the intention. So last time around, it was a little bit of a mistake from the lobby host. So this damage might be persisting.
Well, that's kind of good. I mean, I do personally prefer the heavy damage. It's a little bit more realistic, and of course, you guys do so much hard work to get the cars acting and operating in a realistic way. It's almost a shame to have the damage just automatically disappear after 30 seconds. So I do like that. But of course, it does create the problem of if you've got an expectation that it will get damaged, will get repaired. Or if you get unlucky enough to end up getting into some contact, you will run that damage. And oh dear, Troy has had a massive moment there on the final corner. I think that's probably showing that that damage is really, really holding him up and causing him some grief. Back at the top of the grid, of course, it is Dean van der Zandt. And take it away, Andrew.
I was going to say, might be time to pit for some of these guys that are carrying damage, but they should be aware that the damage will persist. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. But you can recover a few places if you pit to fix the damage. But interesting battle up the front here. These two guys are pretty much still line astern. Black Friday's still definitely in the slipstream of the leader here, so it's not over yet. It might come down to tyre management at the end of this race for the win.
I couldn't agree more. In fact, actually, speaking of tyres, since we are now coming up to the halfway mark as we cross the line for lap 7, Andrew, would you be kind enough to take us through and give us a little update on how everyone's tyres and fuel are doing at the moment?
Yeah, well, we've got the leader, Imat. He is looking after his tyres quite nicely. Second place, Black Friday's front right's looking a little bit worse for wear, but he's got more fuel, interestingly. Birdman in third, the first of the Camaros, which are worse on tyres. He's managed them pretty well. And Heathen behind him has got a Mustang with pretty fresh tyres also. Says in the Camaro, his tyres are looking just about the best of anyone. So he might make a charge in the back half of this race. Aiden Sampson, unfortunately, has got a Camaro with very worn tyres. So he might be heading in the wrong direction grid-wise. He's got Brucey on his tail in a Mustang, still looking very fresh and very racy, actually. And then we're back to DP Mario, who unfortunately has got some front splitter damage, and he's got some worn tyres. His front right, it's the front right's the critical tyre around here. And your setup can have a pretty significant effect on your tyre usage. So his front right's not looking great. Captain Snooze, he's carrying a lot of damage. Poor old Wakey, he's got some tyres pretty decent for a Camaro, but he's carrying front and rear damage. Boosted Blake behind him will be looking to get past, although he's got damage as well. His tyres are fine in that Mustang. The Mustang is typically a lot easier to look after your tyres in. Flighty Whitey, he's carrying some front damage there, fairly significant, and his tyres are reasonably healthy. Cooch there, he's got real trouble with damage and tyre trouble. Robinson, he's got fresh tyres in a Mustang and a clean set of heels damage-wise, so he might be looking to gain a couple of places here. Brits Lightning bringing up the rear. He's just got front suspension damage, which he may be able to complete the race with, and nice fresh tyres on his Mustang.
Very interesting. In fact, I did see Kutcher there. He's running the hazard lights on his car, so he's obviously in a bit of trouble there. But yeah, as you mentioned, right at the back of the grid, I mean, things are starting to close up, and that was nearly a moment there for Dean van der Zaan out in the lead. But look at the gap he's got. I think we've had an issue for Matthew Joynton, because he's dropped way back from Dean van der Zaan, and as you mentioned before, that could be quite easily down to tyres. It's a big thing. You know, there's a big strategy involved in that. Do you save tyres at the start? Do you lose positions? Do you push the tyres at the start and try and keep those positions, knowing that probably later on in the race you're going to be under a lot of pressure? It's reasonably easy to overtake, I would say, in these situations. It's a track that's conducive to overtake. Lots of wide circuit area, lots of corners that you want to sort of go in late apex, which opens up the entry of the corner. So I think there's lots of overtaking opportunities out there for these guys and girls on circuits. So yeah, I'm not quite sure what I would do in this situation. My personal approach is slow and steady wins the race. You know, maintain the tyres, look after them, and at the end you're going to be on an absolute charge.
Yeah, that's right. We'll start seeing it now from lap 9 onwards. We'll see the guys that have looked after their tyres nicely. They'll be making charges, and they will be the ones that are able to make the easy overtakes. They'll get the better exits out of the corners. They'll be able to brake later, carry more speed through apexes. So let's we could see some fireworks here in the closing 4 or 5 laps.
And fireworks are not what Alexander for me, Cooke Driver Development, is seeing at the moment. He's seeing nice clean air in front of him and a nice clean rear mirror, which is always nice to see, especially if you're running in the top 5, which he is. So well done there. The same cannot be said for Aiden Sampson. He's gone off. He's absolutely binned. He was in a huge battle between himself, Boosted Blake there, and DP, sorry, that's Bruce the Shark and DP Mario, who've both now gone ahead of him. So he's had a major issue there. That's probably tyre life and maybe just a bit of a miscalculation on the braking zone. And yeah, he looks like he's struggling because there's just no grip for him on those tyres. Of course, they will be dirty as well after running off track. So very unfortunate there for Aiden Sampson and Diffusion Race Engineering. That's not going to do him any favours going through, but yeah, that's a bit of a blessing for Bruce the Shark and DP Mario.
Yeah, they should be able to drive away now, because poor old Aiden's got a front right tyre that's screaming for mercy, and he's now carrying a bit of damage at the rear. He must have clipped the old barrier there with his rear quarters when he went off in the grass. But yeah, his front right tyre is just about exhausted, so he's going to have a job ahead of him to get this car home.
Yeah, he didn't take a trip to Barrier. He went and stayed the night, unfortunately. But nonetheless, it's not, you know, he's a nice dude, Barrier, but not someone you want to spend the night with, that's for sure. And looking down the grid here, we've got a little four-way battle that's starting to evolve. We've got Boosted Blake here. That's Blake Williamson for Scarborough Motorsport. And he's been under a little bit of pressure from Chris White, who's been lurking in the background, but behind him, we've got a trail of 3 cars there. So we've got Old Wakey, that's Nathan Wakefield, I should say. Old Wakey is his other screen name. Matt Kutcher, Robert Robinson in Roadstick Racing, who, by the way, as you predicted, Andrew, he is absolutely flying now. Looking really, really good, and he's going to probably get ahead of Matt Kutcher, who's run quite wide. He's still got his hazard lights on. Oh, side by side through one of the fastest sectors of the race, and wow, that was really close. Robert Robinson decides to back out of it, which is probably the right thing to do in that situation.
Yes.
Matt Kutcher is going to be under all sorts of pressure in this left-hander.
Robbo should be able to get past him fairly easy here, because he's got relatively clean tyres and no damage. So let's see how he goes. He'll have the right of way here into this chicane. So there you go. Poor old Cooch is carrying front and rear damage. So he's severely compromised there. So the Mustang gets around him quite easily.
Yeah, it's the easiest overtake we've seen on the grid all day, I think. But yeah, unlucky for Matt Kutcher. I mean, once you're holding that damage, I mean, you know, you've only got 13 laps to do it. And I mean, but yeah, the pit stop, I'm not 100% sure how much it's going to cost, but it's usually in the range of 30 to 50 seconds. So I'm probably going to average that out at about 40 seconds of pit time loss. It's not the longest straight in the world, so you're not going to lose a lot of time necessarily to your opponents either. Probably worth coming into the pits if you're holding that much damage.
It could be. It depends. When you're showing damage, it could be quite light. You'll hardly notice it. but it could also have your steering wheel half cocked to the left as well. So you can generally feel whether you need to go in and pit or not. It's quite often when you cop damage, it's worth doing at least a lap to see how it feels. If you're losing significant time, it's time to bite the bullet and pay the piper and come in.
Yeah, so awareness of your own lap times and what you're capable of on these tyres is going to be absolutely key. And now Robbo Robinson's on the rear bumper, quite literally, of Mr. Wakefield for Mash Spuds Racing. So I think the Mash Spuds Racer is also carrying a bit of damage. He's looks for the inside line, down into turn 4 or 5, I believe. Oh, doesn't quite hold it, but...
Rinse and repeat here.
Oh, dear.
Robbo comes around cleanly. And Wakey, unfortunately, yes, he is carrying damage, and there it is, job done. That long left-hander, you do not want to be carrying damage through that long left-hander. So Robbo does it again.
Yeah, he's on a charge right
Nice
now.
one.
The next one in front of him is going to be Chris White. Does look like he might be carrying a little bit of damage. He's in the fight right now with Booster Blake. Okay, so I don't think Robbo is any more than about 3 or 4 seconds down the road. I think that time's going to drop rapidly. We're only on lap 11, so there's still technically this lap and 2 others to go in this race. That would probably be enough time. I've got my money on Robbo to go for it here.
Yep. He'll get a top 10 here, I think, and he's picking them off quite nicely too. He's choosing discretion as a better part of valor quite often, rather than licking stamps and sending them. So it's very nice, clean, clinical racing here from Robbo. Well done, mate.
Yeah, when you've got the grip, you've got to absolutely use it. And, being aware of where your opponents are slow, which, if they're carrying damage and have worn tires, is pretty much everywhere. So you've got almost unlimited opportunities to go and make that overtake, but you've still got to do it in a sensible, respectful way. Use all that racecraft and the smarts, the tissue on top of our heads to make sure that we make sensible decisions. Because you don't want to end your race, especially when you've made such a good comeback drive.
Yes, having a significantly faster car is not an excuse to just barge on by. So it's good to see these clean passes being made and nice controlled driving from the Johnson lobby guys. Good to see.
Yeah, it really, really is.
Brucey bearing down on Cez here for 5th position, which is interesting. He's in the Mustang with worse tyres than Cez. So Cez has done a pretty good job with that Camaro. But the Mustang is a little bit better under brakes and through the corners, so we'll see if Bruce can make some impressions.
This is going to be a little...
For a top 5.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, Bruce Shark and Mad Turtle Racing would be absolutely stoked to get a top 5 position. It is worth a fair chunk of points. The points difference is not large, but it's significant over the entire course of the race. So it's important, obviously, to get any positions you can. But yeah, Alexander here, he'll have to do a bit of work in that Camaro. And I have to admit, he's looking, obviously, he's got good tyres. He's looking fairly comfortable in that car, but doesn't seem to be finding the pace as much as possible. He's sort of running in the, on average, about a 135. And if we just compare that to the likes of Brucey, he's running closer to 134s consistently all the way through the race, despite having that little bit of damage as well. So, yeah, maybe Alexander just needs to find a little bit more pace, trying to break the slipstream there. That might just be an effort to stop the front of the car going up into the air. Nonetheless, through the last few corners, we've got our leader, Dean van der Zandt. We are on the final lap. So Dean van der Zandt has pulled off a brilliant, clean race there, getting away very nicely at the start. Always tricky here to get away in that turn 1. Disasters can happen, but the 132 car there will take the victory here in race 1. That'll put him right at the back of the grid for the start of race 2. Flashes the lights a couple of times, says thank you very much. I'll take the checkered flag, I'll take it home, put it in the trophy cabinet. And Matthew Johnson comes into P2, followed by Birdman. That is Jeremy Crow for Cullen Racing Team. That's a good result for him. P3 on the back of some great results last time at Croatia. Nielsen here nearly got taken into this battle behind, but Alexander will hold on from Bruce the Shark, and they will take a P4, P5, and P6 respectively. DP Mario will come in P7. So that was a pretty good race, and that's across the line with style, isn't it?
Yes. Interesting choice of line there.
Yeah, unique. We're inventing new lines as we go. That's how things go. So brilliant stuff from the first race. Booster Blake here for Scarborough Motorsport will continue to maintain P9, and that is indeed a top 10 for Robinson because he's gotten ahead of Chris White, who falls back to P11. That's a brilliant drive from Robbo. That is absolutely excellent. So the Road Tech Racing driver obviously getting involved in a little bit of action earlier on, which certainly was not ideal. Now able to come back and a top 10 finish for him. That's very impressive.
Great drive there. He nearly got 9th too, so it wasn't far away from 9th position.
Yeah, I think he's going to be one to keep an eye on. Obviously, he did. I think he did go into the pits earlier. I'm not 100% sure on that. We will try and confirm, but nonetheless, he's done incredibly well. So, over to your race 1 results here, and that'll be 100 points in the bag for CP Motorsport and Dean van der Zaan. Great drive. Clean drive. Matthew Joinson, of course, will take P2. It's 92 points in the bag for him. Excellent stuff. Crow, that's Birdman, will take P3 for Column Racing Team. That's your top 3, folks. 86 points in the bag for Column Racing Team. Nielsen, that's Heath there for Whiplash Motorsport. It's a good result overall, 4th position. Not quite as good as the first result from Croatia, where he did take the victory for Whiplash Motorsport, but nonetheless, still a very, very strong result there, 80 points in the bag. Alexander for Meat Cougar Driver Development will take 74 points home for his team, and then Mead for Total Racing, that is Big Bruce the Shark, will take home 68 points. DP Mario for Hasseldine Automotive Racing will take 64 points home for his team. Aiden Sampson, 8th position, will take 60 points home for Diffusion Race Engineering. Williamson will take for Scarborough Motorsport 56 points home, and then top 10 of course here for Robbo Robinson, 52 points he will take home for Road 6 Racing. And then of course the remaining 4 positions is White, Wakefield, Kutcher and Troy Britnell. Overall, Andrew, I think that was a very, very good first race there. Any votes for driver of the day in terms of driver of the race, DOTR?
Oh, I'd say one of the top 2 because they had very clean, very convincing results there. So I'm going to give it to P1.
Good, yeah. I think Dean van der Zaan had a really, really clean race there, and as you said, really protected his tyres, which is absolutely key for this kind of event. But now we've got to have race 2, because race 2 is going to get very interesting, because now we're going to have strategy, not only tyre strategy, but also fuel strategy coming in. 26 laps. We've just had 13. Now we're going to go for 26 laps. And yeah, if we thought the first one was exciting, now we're going to get into the real interesting stuff.
Absolutely. It'll be interesting to see what tyres people choose to start on, and also what lap they decide to come in and pit on as well.
Yeah, that's right. Well, tyre choice is an interesting one, isn't it? So we do have a mandatory soft tyre here, I believe, for today. Maybe you can confirm that with me.
That's right. The mandatories are soft, but there could be some people doing longer stints on mediums because the softs may not be able to make half race distance, but we could have some 2 stoppers as well. So that'll be very interesting to see these different choices of strategy all coming together at the end of the race.
That's right. At Croatia, we actually did see DP Mario go for a double stop strategy. Unfortunately, it didn't quite work out for him. He is a bit of a favourite. He does tend to favour the double stop there, so we might see the same thing coming out for DP Mario again today. So just very quickly, just to run through what the grid will be, it'll be Troy Britnell in first position, starting first, because it is a reverse grid for race 2. Matt Kutcher, then we've got Old Waking and Captain Snooze. We've got Chris White, Robbo Robinson, we've got Blake as well in P6. That is Blake Williamson. Aiden Sampson in P7. DP Mario P8. Bruce the Shark in P9. Alexander in P10. We've got P11 will be Nielsen. And we've got Crow here in P12. Matthew Johnson in P13. And last on the grid will be Dean van der Zaan, your race 1 winner. So, Andrew, I think it's time for us to go and get this started, because I can see all the cars out on the grid once again. So are we all ready to go? And should we go onto the grid?
Let's do it.
Brilliant. Okie dokie. So here we go onto the grid again, and we've got 1 light. We've got 2 lights. We've got 3 lights. We've got 4 lights. 5 lights are on. The pause is happening. Wait for the false grid start, and green. Green flags out. Once again, Troy Britnell gets an average start off the line, and that is Matt Kutcher and Captain Snooze. That's Old Wakey going straight through the Mash Spuds Racing driver, having a fantastic start at the beginning of this race. Troy Britnell has had a bit of a disaster, and Chris White will probably get him. And oh dear, there's been big contact there. That is our former race leader there.
Lightning.
Yeah, he's gone.
Yeah.
He's absolutely gone.
He's okay. He's not carrying damage, but he's off on the grass. Oh, now he's looped it.
Oh
he
no!
Was recovering with dirty tyres, and he's looped the car, so he's at the back of the field with damage, unfortunately.
Oh dear, it's a disaster start from P1 to last in the space of one corner after finishing last in race 1. Disaster for Troy Britnell, but I'm sure he'll get that car started again eventually and get it back on the grid. At the moment, some great moves happening around. Robbo Robinson is now up into P3, so it's a really good start for the Road Tech Racing driver. Boosted Blake under a lot of pressure from DP Mario, who has gotten ahead of him almost immediately around that turn. I think that's turn 9. Birdman there, Crow, looking to get up. He's into P7 at the moment. Your previous race winner, that's Dean van der Zaan, at the back here, having a great fight. Currently up in P11, but behind Bruce the Shark. Nielsen there in P12, looking strong, but unfortunately for Alexander, he's missed out a little bit, and he's fallen behind some of the faster drivers ahead, and he'll have a bit of work to do. But again, lots of strategy is going to come into this today, and leading us away around the first lap, it is Matt Kutscher. So the Penrite Camaro there is leading us away, P1, followed by Mr. Wakefield behind, and the Mash for Mash Spuds Racing. And Robbo's just snuck a little eye, just put a little nose in there just to keep in the left mirror of old Wakey. So that's very, very good racing there for the Robbo Sport driver.
Yeah, they're still just sorting themselves out. Their line astern pretty much by now, but still on cold tyres. Boosted Blake there in 6th is really putting some pressure on Black Friday. He might even get the position here into the big left-hander.
It does just stick a nose up the inside, but it's not quite enough for Matthew Joynson to really give him too much space, and he manages to loop back in and get a good run out of the fast left-hander, turn 5. And he's actually gone purple as well, has Matthew Joynson. I know that he's a very, very fast guy for the Juice Motorsport camp, and they've obviously done a lot of good work with that Ford to get it into a state where he can feel comfortable. You usually find him racing GT3 cars in MotorMotion E-Series, but as a good dude, and he's just actually does a bit of streaming too, so hats off to him. 4th place at the moment goes to DP Mario. He's right on the back of Robbo now, so Robbo's going to be under a bit of pressure. I get the feeling that DP Mario might be on a different set of tyres, but we will keep that information for later on. And that's all Matthew Joynson and Crow going at it again. Crow had another look down to that very, very tricky last corner, and I believe the car of Troy Britnell is in the pits and retired. They've retired the car. That is super unfortunate. I'm hearing from the grid that spin that he had there caused some pretty bad internal damage to the car, and they're not going to have it repaired in time to get him back out on track. That's a real shame. Unfortunate,
very unfortunate. DP Mario's on a bit of a charge here into turn 1. He's asking the question of Robbo Sport, but he's got Black Friday for company, so he's got to watch his mirrors as well. This is really good driving here. They're all on soft tyres at the front, these drivers. They're all having a crack on soft, seeing how long they'll last.
That's probably a good plan, to be honest. I mean, get that track position. And, that's a big move for Robbo. He's trying to try on the outside of Matt Kutscher. And he does do it. And by the way, old Wakey for Mash Spuds Racing has managed to find his way up into P1. I wonder if that was a bad exit there for Matt Kutscher. Somewhere between turn 1 and turn 5, he's had a bit of an issue. And now he's going to be under a huge amount of pressure from DP Mario. DP Mario, of course, he's well known in... that was... Hold on. Did we just have some contact there? Matthew Joynson. So close now between these three. Crow as well in this battle as well. And this is what you love to see in supercars racing, when the difference in time is measured in thousandths of a second, not tenths of a second.
They are going for it here. You'd think this was the sprint race, not the 26 lap race, but they're really having a go, these guys. So it's going to be really interesting to see how their tyre wear pans out in the next few laps, because there could be some guys here paying the price for slightly aggressive driving at the start here. They'll have trouble at the end of their stints.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, even if you're on a fast stint, you might be doing a 2-stop or all that sort of good stuff. But at the end of the day, if you're not looking after these tyres, you will find yourself very rapidly running out of grip. And one of the things is you can plan for a lot of things, but what you can't plan for is what you need to do defensively. And speaking of defensively, Crow now needed to go defensive because he's got Aiden Sampson. That's a very bold defensive move there from Crow, and manages to stay ahead of Aiden Sampson. He's got Chris White behind him at the moment in P8. That's absolutely fantastic driving. Very committed from the Colin Racing team there. Had to look at the side on my own broadcast just to make sure I was looking at the right car.
Great driving here. This is really interesting. There's position changes into turn 1 nearly every lap. So that exit of the final turn and the run on down into turn 1 is where the excitement's at the moment.
Yeah, well, such a high-speed section, and you get a bit of a slipstream as well. Of course, if you get a good run out of turn one, it's all high speed, basically from the final corner all the way down to where we are now, which is the hardest one of the hardest braking zones on the track. This sort of last sector here, and that's a very wide car in Matt Kutscher. Matt Kutscher has been run off the road, or run himself off the road, I should say, and has had an absolute disaster day. He's now down in 13th position. He was running up in the top 3, leading the race at one point. Oh dear, oh dear. That is not a good day out for that driver. Crikey.
Yeah,
really unfortunate.
He's unfortunately picked up a bit of damage too, so the story doesn't get any better for him. On lap 4 of 26, it might be time to come into the pits here and maybe think about a alternate strategy. Old Bono's on the radio to him now, talking about plan B, I think. Let's see what he chooses to do.
Hopefully he doesn't get an in, out kind of call, but I'm sure they won't. They'll figure out exactly what they need to do. Good team, of course, and yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Once you've picked up that damage, it's time to come into the pit and really change strategies. The hard option tyre is available, I believe, to all the races. We don't usually see that. Usually, obviously, you prefer to be on the mediums, but if your softs are dead, then it's time to get them chucked out and get a fresh set of tyres, and potentially you could go to the end of the race on a set of hard tyres quite easily. The problem is going to be fuel.
Exactly, and the hard tyre is just inherently just slow by default, so it's not normally the tyre of choice. But you could opt to go, a medium stint now and softs at the end. So if you pick up damage now, there's definitely some scope there to try and change your strategy and come and think on your feet and see what you can come up with.
That's right. Now, looking back at the grid a little bit here, we've got a great battle that's been evolving for a whole bunch of time. We've got Bruce the Shark in P8, Chris White P9. Dean van der Zandt is in P10 at the moment, so currently in the top 10. Absolutely stunning stuff. Nielsen right behind him, putting a whole bunch of pressure on because we've got Blake Williamson for Scarborough Motorsport also breathing down there next. And these 5 have been absolutely inseparable. Of course, Nielsen's got to do some work to do. And, oh, that's Blake Williamson making a bit of a move, or trying to, on Nielsen, but it wasn't on. It wasn't going to happen. The door got absolutely shut in his face. It's a walk with me moment there for those of you who've seen the Dodgeball movie. Slidey for Dean van der Zandt. He's pushing the absolute limit on that Ford Mustang.
Yeah, I tell you what, this is a ding-dong battle right now. We've got our race 1 winner, Imat. He's stuck in traffic here. He's looking after his tyres well, but he needs to clear some drivers here if he wants to make some impressions and push for another podium.
Yeah, we're getting a very good onboard look now, and it'll be interesting to see what Dean van der Zandt does with the inputs. This is quite an important part of saving tyres and making sure you're not overusing them. How much mechanical grip are you using versus how much input you're using from the brakes and the accelerator, inducing slip angle, inducing oversteer, understeer. He's got Blake on the side of him, Nielsen as well, but he's got the inside line on Chris White. Beautiful lovely move from Dean.
Very nice.
Yeah, that is stunning stuff. By the way, we've got Crow has set the fastest lap of the race, a 1:32.689. That is a very, very solid lap time, being in the 32s at all. I don't know what they were doing in the Brock lobby, but I suspect they were probably in that range.
Yes, I think I saw some 32s and 33s there in Brock lobby. I think that was the number they were shooting for. So a 32.6 from Birdman. Wow, that is moving.
Yeah, and of course in race conditions too, so very good. He's not actually clear of any traffic as well, so he's in the battle pack in race conditions and setting 32. Very, very impressive. He's going to be one to keep an eye on. By the way, I would just like to say that Dean van der Zandt's inputs are very, very smooth and controlled.
He's looking after his tyres beautifully. I'm very proud of him. I love anyone that can look after their tyres. So, Monica, if you're watching, well done to you. And Imat seems to be taking a leaf out of her book, because he's, compared to the cars around him, looking really good on tyres, really racy.
That's extremely good to hear. And yes, I believe that Monica is in fact in chat. We had a little bit of stuff going on in chat, but so much action on track. Crow now going for a move on old Wakey there. Mr. Wakefield goes up the inside. The switcheroo trying to be done by the Mash Spuds racing driver, can't handle it. That's another beautiful overtake there. And yeah, Crow is now up into P2. This is brilliant. So he's taken advantage of the slightly worse result he's had in race 1. Started ahead of the faster runners that finished ahead of him in the first race, and now he's on an absolute charge. He's got Robbo Robinson in front of him, and then it's clean air. So this is a great charge from that driver. I don't think there's any tyre difference either between these two. They're all running on softs, and Mario there making a move now on Wakefield as well. So Wakefield is struggling. He's falling back in the grid at the moment.
Yeah, there could be a reason for that. Let's have a look. His tyres aren't looking as good as some of the people around him. So he could be starting to pay the price there, and it's going to get worse for him.
Yeah, that's right. Juice Motorsports driver Matthew Joynson just tried to move on DP Mario. It wasn't going to happen. That's down to one of the nastiest chicanes on the grid. And yeah, nearly got spun around as well, because he did tag the back at turn 13 and 14 in what is known as Sector 4. No real official track names. It is a fictional track here in Gran Turismo 7, but it is a brilliant track. I do like it here.
It's a great track. You know, when you've hooked up a nice lap, it's a very rewarding track. When you get it just right, you can set some really fast times here. So yeah, it's good. It's a good track to test yourself on.
Yeah, and certainly when you haven't got, I mean, it is a lot of fun with high downforce cars, but these cars don't have a heck of a lot of downforce. They're heavy, they're low downforce. You know, they've obviously got the mechanical grip to make up for it, but I think that makes it more fun at a track like this, where it's all about managing your mechanical grip, all about managing the inputs of the car. You know, if you're driving a GR1 car around here, it's not really a massive challenge because you're throwing it into every corner at 200 kilometers an hour. But in these cars, you've got to be very careful on the brakes, very subtle inputs, especially around corners like turn 6, the sweeping left-hander, and turn 1. You've got to be very careful on the inputs, not to induce too much oversteer and burn out those tires.
Oh, for sure. These cars are a handful at the best of times, but around here you've got to be so precise. You cannot ask 1 kilometre an hour too much of the tyres, otherwise you're going to be pushing wide.
That's right. A little update here for P6. So Alexander has been doing very well to hold off Aiden Sampson and Diffusion Race Engineering. I suspect there is a significant difference in their tyre life as it stands. But Andrew, I think it's time for us to go and do a little tyre and fuel update from around the grid and let us know who's on what tyre, what their fuel's like, and how the degradation is going.
Sure, yeah, we'll start up the front. We've got Robbo Sport just holding off Birdman. He's in the Mustang. Robbo Sport's making a move. He's having a look up the inside. He's about to inherit the lead. They come together a little bit. A little bit of Robbins Racing's there, but he makes the move stick. So it's now Birdman in front, and he's got relatively good tyres. His front right's about half worn. He's got half a tank of fuel, so he's managing them both well, and that's made it possible for him to get through into the lead, and he's now checking out a little bit too, where Robbo's there on the Mustang with relatively good tyres and fuel. DP and Mario is struggling on tyres, so he's holding up these guys around him right now. We've got Black Friday next to him now. He's going to possibly make a move into this chicane. He's going to have a look, decides against it, falls back in behind him, but he's got significantly better tyres than DP Mario. He's chewing through a bit of fuel, so that could be an issue for him later. And we've got Captain Snooze watching the proceedings. He's not looking too good on tyres either. Could be some two-stoppers here. We've got Cez 360. Oh, my God, his tyres are fantastic again. He's got a fuel advantage as well, so we'll watch for him. He could be a dark horse in this race. He'll be doing a one-stopper, possibly soft then soft, so he could be on the absolute cracker optimal strategy there. We'll see where he ends up at the end. We've got Brucey there in the Mustang. His tyres are looking pretty good, and he's okay on fuel. Samson behind him in a Camaro with a front right tyre that's just about to blow. I tell you, it is in trouble. He's got IMAP behind him, hassling like crazy on tyres that look absolutely new compared to the car in front. Heathen there in the Ford Mustang has got a nice tyre wear. He's a little bit down on fuel, so he's going to waste a bit of time in the pits refueling. Boosted Blake has got no problems with fuel.
Nielsen has gone. He's gone for a huge spin, ran wide at turn 1. Sorry to interrupt, Ando, but that is a massive amount of damage to the left-hand side of the car, and that'll be costing him massively now down in P11. Oh, he's got no control.
Oh, never get sideways. And that's the threat there. The risk you have when you're recovering to make things worse for yourself, and he's definitely done that.
And sorry to interrupt, I think we were up to about Chris White now in P10.
Yes, he's in the Camaro, is it? Yeah, his tyres are looking a little bit tired, but he might be able to make the half race distance. We'll see what he decides to do. Cooch definitely is going to have to be pulling into the pits. I'd say he's probably pulling in this lap. He's got a bit of damage to fix anyway. Then we've got Heathen. Heathen, we caught that on stream, that little whoopsie. He's got front and rear damage now, so he's going to pull in for sure. DP Mario has already pitted. He's got a fresh set of boots and a bit of fuel. He doesn't have a full fuel tank, so he's going for the two-stopper, viewers. So let's see if that ends up being a master stroke or not.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Andrew, for the fuel and tyre update. And yes, folks, so we've had some requests to get the telemetry on. It's something I always forget in race 2. So the telemetry is now on the main live stream. We've got Troy Bittnell now in the pits as well. So he's going to, oh, sorry, he's actually been in the pit since lap 1. My fault there. I thought it was a fresh pit there, but no, unfortunately that's due to the car damage that they've sustained. They have retired the car, unfortunately. But yes, DP Mario, so he's going for his usual, cut the race into thirds, go fast as possible, and then take less fuel in the pit stops, go for faster pit stops, change tires, go out and absolutely go on a charge. We'll see if this one works out for him. It didn't really work out for him last time out at Dragon Trails. It's a bit of an interesting strategy. I've raced against this man in Sector 1. It's another league that he and I are both involved in, and that two-stop strategy is sort of a bit hit and miss. Sometimes works out perfectly, sometimes doesn't, but nonetheless, DP Murray is a very, very fast driver, so if anyone can make it work, it's going to be him. Nonetheless, going through our grid, earlier on, that little bit of contact that Crow had getting past Robbo, probably just a little bit cheeky. We'll leave that for the stewards after the race, but nonetheless, your leader of the race right now is, in fact, for Colin Motorsport Racing, it is Crow. So Crow doing a brilliant job here for his team. And another car here, Colin Motorsport Racing, the Camaro, with a very high rake. It does seem to be, Andrew, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the Camaro seem to be running the higher rake.
It does. It can benefit from that high rake a little bit better than the Mustang, because it's the harder car to drive. Now that it doesn't have a rear diffuser, it's actually a little bit of a handful to drive compared to the Mustang, which has actually, since last series, become, I think, with a couple of game updates, quite a lot easier to drive. So it's now the tame one. So you'll see them set that up nice and low to the ground, whereas the Camaro needs a little bit of help just to make it drivable.
Yeah, it's an interesting little difference between these two cars, and that can make all the difference in terms of the driving style as well. Obviously, tyre life and such like that will have a bit of an impact. And yeah, no rear diffuser on the Camaro is an interesting one, because a lot of the setup, you know, when you do have a diffuser, you want to get the suspension at the rear a little bit softer, so that every time you put the power down, the car puts all its weight on the back. That diffuser gets slammed, not literally, but pushed down into the ground to close up the gap underneath the car. It's very similar to what happens in Formula 1 now with the new aero that happens underneath the car. So those big channels of air that get pushed underneath the car, really important for the cars to get sucked into the ground as much as possible. And suspension geometry is absolutely critical to make that happen. But nonetheless, the Mustang with a beautiful diffuser on the back, the Camaro without.
I think actually the Mustang doesn't have a diffuser full stop. It's not allowed. There's not one available for it. So
I see.
It's just naturally that easier car to drive, but it does lack a little bit of straight line speed. So this is what I love about these cars. The parity's there because the Mustang is that little bit slower, but it is that little bit easier to drive, that little bit better under brakes, better into the corners, but just doesn't have the poke that the Camaro has.
That is interesting. Yes. So just looking through chat as well and around the grid, got a little battle going on here, of course, between Robbo Robinson and PLE Black Friday. PLE Black Friday, by the way, has made a brilliant move on Robbo Robinson. It's now up to P2, so these two having a great little fight. Around the grid, there are a few more chaps having a great fight. We're on lap 13 now, so I'm expecting to see some pit stops very, very soon, but everyone wants to extend to half race distance and try and get 2 sets of the softs run here, I believe. And again, not being one of the teams, part of the teams or drivers here, I'm a little bit in the dark in terms of the strategy. Maybe Andrew, you can enlighten us to that, but I also do want to bring up a few things that have been running over in chat as well. Glenn Mead has actually mentioned here this was in fact a real racetrack, so something I didn't know. It was a real racetrack until an earthquake damaged it. Yeah, interesting fact there, and it is in Japan. That's almost not a surprise in some ways. Hopefully they get that repaired at some point. There you go. So that is very interesting. I thought it was a fictional place. Turns out battle
for fourth position here. We've got Captain Snooze and Says absolutely side by side. They could both be coming into the pits on this lap as well. but Says has the fuel advantage, so it'll be very interesting to see. Oh, no, Wakey gets sideways, hands him the position. He's on a fully red front right tyre too, so he's going to be into the pits now, and he's going to need a bit extra time to refuel as well. And here Says goes in, Wakey goes in. They're all coming in now, half race distance gone.
The race is now going to enter the pit lane, as they all do stay stationary for the period that they need to fuel up, put the fuel in. The one to keep an eye on now is going to be DP Mario, who's currently running in ninth. He's coming around the last corner right now. DP Mario could be in to jump up quite a few places.
And he'll want to as well, because he's going to have to do another pit stop too. So he's going to want to have a nice, good gap. I think it's about 15, 16 seconds here, the pit stop duration. But then you've got to add fuel to it as well. So he's going to want to have a good 20 to 25 second lead when he pits again, if he wants to have any chance of being on the podium.
That's right, where he is now all the way through the S's and coming up towards turn 6. So he has got a pretty decent lead there, but he's going to need to extend that. Based on what I'm seeing right now, he's going to need a bit more time under the hood. He's going to have very fast running chaps behind him. By the way, out of the pits first is actually Alexander. So he's gone and jumped all the way up the grid into P2.
Absolutely. He's got obviously a master strategist on his side, because he's been looking after his fuel, and he has saved a ton of time refueling. He's short fueled himself, but he's going to be short shifting as well, and he has just inherited second place. I think he's jumped 3 guys there in the pits.
I think he has, because he's jumped ahead of Crow, Bruce the Shark, and Peely Black Friday. He was in a fight, I believe, with... was it Aiden Sampson, I think it was. So he might have jumped a few more positions than that. We'll have to try and figure this one out. But
he was battling with Captain Snooze, who handed him 4th position. So he's gained at least 2 positions in the pit stop there, because he's needed a lot less fuel, and he's got a lighter car now, but he's going to have to watch it. I hope he hasn't underfueled too much, but we'll see what he can do. But this was the strategy going in for me, Cougar, that there'd be some time to be gained in the pits in the refueling.
Yeah, very, very good call there, because obviously that refuel rate is not particularly fast. So every litre you can spare is going to give you an extra 0.2, 0.3 of a second, and that makes a difference. You can see the difference it makes, because Alexander has jumped up probably, probably almost a second and a half, 2 seconds, maybe more than that, in terms of overall race time, just from saving a little bit of extra fuel during that first stint. And yeah, the time you save there is just massive. But I have to admit, with Birdman, Crow being so quick on track, he's got a bit more fuel on board, but the tires will be just as fresh. And yeah, with the lack of short shifting, if he doesn't have to short shift, this will make it a bit of a challenge for Alexander. But all play to him, because that is a brilliant strategy. It's being executed very well by Alexander. And of course, Birdman, Crow in P3 now, Bruce the Shark from Mad Turtle Racing in P4, P5 to Black Friday. That's Matthew Joynton from Juice Motorsport, who's gone from P2 to P5, so he's lost a position there to Bruce. Old Wakey in the background as well. He's actually not running very much fuel at all, which is very interesting. So tried to save time in the pits, but maybe used a bit more fuel in stint 1 and had to sit there in the pits just that little bit longer. He's now got Robert Robinson, who's also fighting. So those that started right at the front of the grid, due to the reverse grid, now starting to fall back, not able to save as much fuel in the first stint.
Yeah, there's an interesting quirk with these cars, that if you short shift them like crazy and set them up with nice tall gearing, you don't really lose much lap time at all. So there's a real opportunity to save fuel and time in the pits if you set the car up correctly and drive it correctly.
Now, I've got to ask, because obviously you are the team lead and Brock lobby driver for me, Cougar Driver Development. Are those red seats in the back of this car, are they standard, or are they something you put in?
That's an interesting one. Our chief liverist, he might have had something to do with those.
Okay, copy. Yeah, cool. I mean, I do want to ask, of course, because we do have the pleasure of having you in here. We have Nick Batasso usually in there. Oh, hold on, before we go to that, Matthew Joynton and Birdman, I've had a huge moment there. Sorry, that's Bruce the Shark and Matthew Joynton. My fault entirely there, but damage now for Matthew Joynton. He's got front right damage and front splitter damage. That's a disaster. So he's had a bit of a slide somewhere into the barrier. And Bruce the Shark has tried to take advantage of that in turn 1. It's not worked out for Bruce the Shark, and those two will continue to battle. But yeah, that's not ideal. You got another 10 laps in this race, and you're carrying damage once again. Joynton will be absolutely fuming in that cockpit.
Yes, that's really frustrating when that happens, because he's just come out, he's on fresh tyres, he's fueled to the end, no need to come in to pit at all, but now he's going to have to start thinking about doing that.
Yeah, very, very tricky. So I was going to ask you a little bit about Cooke Driver Development Team, because on the back of a very, very dominant season in TCR Season 1, you guys have been doing some incredible work around the grid. It's hard not to notice what's been going on. And of course, it's a fairly new team, as I understand it, but what's the passion, what's the goal there with the team?
Yeah, it's just my little baby that I like to do. I've never been a team owner before, so I thought I'd give it a crack. And we're basically focused on bringing on new guys and getting them up to speed. So we don't really want to be recruiting the fastest guys out there. We just want guys that are willing to learn and willing to put in a bit of effort. And we can guarantee almost that they will improve once they come on board with us. So yeah, it's been great. TCR was a huge success, and now we're having another crack here with a team of 3 in supercars. We've unfortunately had a little bit of a problem with drivers dropping out. We've only got 1 driver this round competing with team members with work commitments and whatnot, unfortunately. So we won't be up there on the points tables at this stage, but look out for us come the end of the season.
Brilliant. No, it's absolutely awesome. It was a pleasure to watch you guys have some great success in TCR Season 1. And yeah, of course, at the end of the day, work takes priority. Work and life takes priority. And oh dear, Alexander getting very slidey on the S's, or the chicane style S's. I'm not even sure what to call them, but that's turn 8, 9, 10. And now Birdman in Crow is all over the back of the Cooke driver in the 96 car. So really, really solid stuff here from Alexander to hold on at the moment.
This will be a good battle to the end here, folks. They're both in identical machinery and they're both on soft tyres. But I can tell you right now, well, you can probably see it, folks, yourselves, Birdman is already chewing into his softs a little bit too much. So if Cez can just hold him off now, he might be able to just drive away from him with fresher tyres in the last 4 or 5 laps.
And speaking of drive away with it, or speaking of not driving at all, it is DP Mario who's sitting in the pits now for Hasseltine Automotive. So he's going to have to take on fuel for what is about 9 laps. He's already dropped to P6, P7, P8. In fact, the entire field looks like it's going to come through. I don't think that 2-stop strategy is really viable, unfortunately for him, but he continues to try and make it work, and at some point it may just pay off. But with only 26 laps, I just don't think the 2-stop is going to be viable here. But as you said there, the battle here is going to be between these two at the top for P1. Matthew Joynton is pretty much a mile off, and Alexander goes a little bit wide into turn 6, brings it back in very nicely. That is a tyre saving line if I've ever seen one.
Yeah, wow, Birdman is really asking the question here. So he's going to really be putting some pressure on this new driver to MotorMotion, he says. He's a lovely young chap. He's got a lot of talent. He's got some raw pace like you wouldn't believe. But this will be a real test for him to see if he can hold off Birdman.
Oh, it's a real test. And the switcheroo, though, from Alexander. What a move defensively.
Oh, very nice. What a move.
That is beautiful. Great from Crow as well to make the move, but runs a bit deep, and that brings the opportunity for Alexander to do the switcheroo. And it does happen. I mean, that is very, very tricky. Unfortunately for Crow, he wasn't able to park it on the apex enough. So Alexander very sensibly just dives up the inside, hits the brakes a little bit more, finds that gap, gets the power down sooner than Birdman can, and through he goes, continues to take P1 in this race. This is going to be a battle for the ages between these two, and we've still got 7 laps remaining in this race.
Yeah, they're going to be going at it. There was tremendous clean driving there from both guys. The switchback from Cez was one of the more sexy moves I've seen lately. I have to tell you, you that. But Cez could have a fuel problem here. Birdman does not have a problem with fuel. If he can look after his tyres, he might be able to just continue to put this pressure on Cez and maybe force an error.
So it's going to be critical for Alexander there in Cez to focus on the lift and coast into the corners, because you're not going to want to compromise yourself out of the corners as much as possible. So you'll be looking to find that early turn in and get the power down as soon as possible. Try and keep Birdman from catching up to you and forcing you to go wide into a corner. So parking on the apex and being really precise onto the apex of the corner is going to be absolutely critical. You can see already trying to go defensive to try and force Birdman to go up the outside, but doesn't get it done. That's it's unsuccessful this time. Crow does go up the inside, and that no switcheroo possible because parked on the apex. Learned his lesson, did Crow, and Crow goes ahead in the P1, but it's not over for Alexander. Not over at all because the tyre difference is still significant, while there is, unfortunately, the fuel difference to take into account. Alexander will now try and do a move back around the outside of the last corner in turn 15 and doesn't unfortunately make it happen. So unfortunately Crow has been released here into clean air. Now it's all on Alexander to keep up.
This could be just where Alexander wants to be there, because he's the one with the fuel problem. So he might be happy just to sit here for 3 or 4 laps now and save some fuel and then make his move at the end on the fresher tyres. So this will be really interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, that's right. 6 laps to go. Yeah, that's right. 6 laps to go will determine who ends up coming out on top. Great race so far between these two, really providing some action. And this is not the only action that's going on track, because between P4 and P7, we've got some great stuff happening. We've got a chain of 4 cars, and we've got Dean van der Zandt, who's actually taken the fastest lap of this race. Andrew, a 1:32.473. That is a brilliantly quick time. So Dean van der Zandt, who had to start in 14th position, last on the grid because he won race 1, has already made it back halfway up the grid. Not necessarily the performance that he wanted, because you've got the likes of Crow here, who's managed to get up to P1, but Dean van der Zandt is doing very well and going very, very quickly.
He is. If he can just keep it clean, he might have a few drivers ahead make some little blunders, and he might be able to get up towards that podium position at the end, which will be a tremendous result for the round for him.
That's right, and some close action happening. Let me try and find this on grid here. There we go. Bruce the Shark is being chased down by Wakefield for mashed Spuds Racing. So Nick Pautasso will be very happy with the performance that old Wakey has put in this week. It's been very, very impressive from him since he has joined into the MotorMotion E-Series ecosystem. But Bruce the Shark, of course, doing very well here for Mad Turtle Racing in the 999 car. So Glenn Mead, doing very, very good job for his team. And he's up in the P4. He's not actually that far behind Matthew Joynson, only about 2 seconds down the road from him. The problem is Scott Wakefield, who's looking very fast in that Camaro, who's just putting a lot of pressure on him, forcing him to reconsider his angles, reconsider the lines that he's taking. That's going to be a bit tricky as we go to the final parts of this race.
But for both of them, they'd be very interested to know that Black Friday is carrying damage. So there is a podium to be had here. If they work together and catch up to the back of Black Friday, they could be they're ready to pounce.
That's right. Bruce the Shark has to go very defensive there. Wakefield is looking very, very racy at this stage of the race. I think the tyre life between all 3 of them is pretty equal for the most part. Same with fuel at this stage. And here goes Wakefield again. He's got the inside line into the chicane. Turn 8, 9, 10. He's got the move done. Wakefield, that is a beautiful overtake into turn 9. Stunning stuff. And through he goes into P4. Bruce will pull back into P5. But you're right. Matthew Joynson ahead is carrying damage. That gap, as far as I can tell, is actually closing down quite significantly.
It is coming down. Yeah. Oh, yeah, it will be coming down. His damage is obviously not too bad, but it's definitely going to be having some effect on his lap time. So he's going to have some company very shortly.
And of course, the damage gets exacerbated at the point where you start to lose tires, because then the damage starts to really just sort of, drag the car around. You've got no grip to rely on to save you, because once you've got damage on the car, you do tend to put a bit more steering input into the car to accommodate for the fact that you've got damage. And yeah, as you lose grip, you're not going to have that mechanical grip to rely on, are you?
You do, yes. And his front right is looking okay at the moment. But the one thing with tyre wear is that once it starts accelerating, it starts getting out of hand really quickly. If you're overdriving the car, it tends to be a snowball effect with the tyre wear. And if you add a bit of damage in as well, you're exactly right, George. He could have trouble making this set of tyres last.
That is going to be news to the ears of Wakefield there and Bruce the Shark. Both of them would be absolutely keen for a P3 finish here. That's going to be a podium spot. So Matthew Joynson's got it all to work for right now. He's got 5 more laps, or 4.5 more laps to go in this race. Got plenty of fuel on board, but that damage and tyre life is going to be hurting him. Just keeping an eye on the leaders of the race as well. And the tyre difference is not as significant as I thought it might be. So Crow is actually doing, at least in this humble commentator's opinion, a pretty decent job on the tyre life. We know Alexander, of course, has been trained by the master of tyre whisperers, so he should be very good on his tyres, which he is. I think, actually, just looking around the grid, I think he's the best on his tyres, except for DP Mario, who's run on a fresh set of tyres recently. We do need to find out where he's ended up, but it's not in the top 8.
Yeah, Cez has got a tune and a driving style that's allowed him to have equal tyre wear front to back. Obviously, the right side's going to be worse here, being an anti-clockwise circuit. But he does have a tyre wear advantage over the leader, but he has a fuel disadvantage. So he's going to have trouble now that he's, I think, maybe just falling out of slip as well. He's going to have trouble making any sort of significant inroads here, because he's going to have to just continue to short shift like crazy. Otherwise, he's not going to make it to the end.
Yeah, it's a very, very tricky thing to manage when it comes to the fuel usage. And of course, you know, you get full ability to change up your gearing, and that's obviously going to make an impact as well. But yeah, it's a tricky thing to understand how to do. At least again, from this humble commentator's point of view. Purple in Sector 1 goes Crow. So he's out front and he's just pushing the absolute life out of that Camaro. Knows this is going to be his only chance, because if he ends up with no tyres, that's almost worse than having a short shift, I would have to say.
Oh yeah, you don't want to have a completely red tyre. You will be a sitting duck. So I think he's looking okay. At the end of this lap, there'll only be 3 laps to go, and his front right is just over half worn. So he's done a great job there to have the pace to get to the lead, and also the tyre management to make that strategy of 13 soft work, which it looks like that's ended up being the optimal strategy today.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So Column Racing team will take us around for another lap here. Alexander for Cooke Driver Development in P2. P3 currently sitting with Matthew Joynson, but he's going to be under pressure because that gap has reduced significantly to the Mash Spuds Racing team. Their Camaro here, driven by Mr. Wakefield, and doing a fantastic job of it so far. Bruce the Shark here in the background. I do like to refer to him that, but of course this is Glenn Mead for Mad Turtle Racing, taking P5 at the moment. P6 now to Dean van der Zant for CP Motorsports. I do love this teal livery on that Mustang. It is absolutely beautiful. But nonetheless, he's up into P6 now, ahead of Robbo Robinson, who has run a little bit further back for Road Sick Racing. So something might have happened there. Oh no, I can see what it is. It's his front tyre. It is gone. Pretty much.
Yeah. Yes, that is going to be a problem with still over 2 laps to go. That's not what you want.
No, you hate to see it. But nonetheless, the Kind is Cool logo for these guys, I really do love that. Road Sick Racing, great team, been around for a while. Diffusion Race Engineering, one of our Kiwi entries, looking pretty good as well. Actually, no, he's not, because that tyre is even worse than Robbo's.
Wow. Yeah, it's one thing to try to do the strategy, the 13 laps on softs. It's a completely other thing to actually execute that. So a couple of guys have tried and failed today by the looks of it.
Yeah, consistency of driving and your ability to set equal lap times and enter the corners, exit the corners in the same way every single lap. That's what makes a really good tyre whisperer at the end of the day, at least in this humble commentator's opinion. I really have to stop saying that.
We all know you're not humble, so you just give it up.
That's very true. That's very exactly right. There is zero modesty in the commentary box at the moment, except for what you're bringing in. So looking back at the grid, of course, there's DP Mario. Now, his tyres are actually at about 50% on the front, so it's not looking that great. And to be fair, he's not made up a heck of a lot of positions either, and started reasonably well up the grid. And now, unfortunately, he's running in P9. He will get past Aiden Sampson with some ease, but the fuel looking a little bit dicey for him at the moment, only running about 20, oh, that's a bit less than that, it's about 15% of the fuel, maybe even 12.5%, and there's the move on Aiden Sampson. So it goes up into P8, does DP Mario, good stuff there. Hasseltine Automotive will be very happy with him. He's a fantastic driver, a fantastic bloke as well. There is Blake, so this is Williamson here for Scarborough Motorsport, he's in P10 currently. Chris White for Rush Fire Driving. I think the real name for that is Gridline Racing, I think, there's been a bit of a team integration between those two. But Chris White, P11. Nielsen, after that huge spin, and he has been in the chat as well. So, hello, Heath. How you doing, mate? That spin sucked? Yes. Yes, that spin was very painful for us to watch as well.
And it was on stream too, so...
Yes, that's right. We got it right on stream just as it happened. So the thing is, because this is a delayed broadcast and a replay, we can't say that it's commentator's curse. So there, conspiracy has been disproven.
There you go. No such thing as commentator's curse.
Exactly right. So although we have been chatting, we saw some anti-driver complaining spray posted in the MotorMotion E-Series paddock. And so I chimed in and said, no, what you really need is some anti-commentator's curse spray. It's for the whole car. Nonetheless, Matt Kutscher rounds out our grid at the moment, P13, currently on track. Very dead right front there, and a bit of damage as well. Troy Brunel, of course, is still in the pits because the car is retired. So, final lap we are on right now. That's a very slow car. I don't quite know who that is. I think that might be, well, we'll find out later on. But Crow has found a huge amount of time to Alexander, so I think Alexander might have had a bit of a fuel issue. Although we saw how fast Crow was, so maybe it's just a speed difference at the end of the day. But nonetheless, this will be a brilliant result for both Crow and Alexander, P1 and P2 at the moment. But Crow at this stage is in P1 and will take, as it stands right now, the victory in race 2. So excellent drive for Colin Racing Team. They're going to be very stoked with that in their Camaro. And overall, I think it's been a pretty brilliant race. 26 laps. Great stuff.
Yes, and Black Friday's in third place here, managing to hold off Brucey, who's gotten by Captain Snooze, who unfortunately has fallen back there. He might have had a little mistake. But Brucey's in fourth. He's putting some pressure on Johnson, but I don't think he's going to have the time. And IMAT has come right up through the field into fifth position. That'll be a great result for him.
Oh, Dean van der Zart is trying around the outside. Unfortunately, can't make it stick. So I think that will be me taking P4 there. But yes, it is Crow taking P1. Alexander taking P2 in race 2. Matthew Joynson takes P3. Oh, very close finish there between Glenn Mead and Matthew and Dean van der Zart. But it is Glenn Mead who will take P4. Dean van der Zart P5. Wakefield will take P6 for Mash Spuds Racing. Robbo Robinson will come in with the hazard lights on in P7. DP Mario gets a very respectable P8 in the top 10. And then Aiden Sampson takes P9 with no tyres at all. There's Blake there for Scarborough Motorsport, or as we've lovingly named them, Acquisition Motorsport. Love them to bits. Great guys. We've got Chris White there coming across the line. In P11, Matt Kutscher's already finished in P13, and there's Nielsen rounding out our grid in P12. So overall, what an absolutely brilliant race too. Absolutely stunning stuff. But top honours will go to Crow, who takes the victory here in race 2. So race 2 results, as you can see on screen. And Andrew, that was a brilliant race. Some lovely strategy evolving there. 3 or 4 distinct strategies being kind of used. I'd say probably 3, with the exception, the outlier there being DP Mario's 2-stop strategy.
Yeah, just a really good example of, like, you know, coming up with an optimal strategy and then executing it. We've seen the top 2 do that perfectly, and they've managed to really, you know, reap the rewards there, because neither of them started anywhere near the front of the grid there. But I think I saw Sagan Alexander back in second last position at one point in the first stint. So he's really, you know, put that strategy, executed it perfectly. I think he might be my driver of the day, mate.
No bias, of course, but
of course.
That's right. No, I have to admit, I completely agree. Alexander did a really good job there, and you know, it's not all about how fast you can drive. We did obviously see Crow make a bit of a questionable overtake in one of the 2 races today, but that'll be all left for the stewards later on. But yeah, I mean, overall, what I appreciate personally, it's not necessarily the race wins, not necessarily the race victories, it's your racecraft, and it's how you manage that strategy. Because I mean, this is just for me personally. When I go driving out there, I'm never the fastest person on the grid. I'm never qualifying in first place, but somehow I end up right at the top of the grid most of the time, and it's usually because you need to be consistent, you need to have your racecraft, you need to have your wits about you, a good, well-oriented, a good tire saving and fuel saving oriented strategy, one where you can take advantage of what other people are not doing as well. And I think Alexander has proved today that he's got the chops to do that, and that's brilliant stuff. So my driver of the day, of course, will be Alexander as well for race 2. So let us know in chat, who was your driver of the day today in both race 1 and race 2 for the Johnson Lobby? Some excellent racing happening here for 13 laps in race 1 and 26 laps in race 2 here in Japan at the Yamagiwa circuit at Kyoto Park. And I actually found out today that turns out this is actually a real place. I didn't know it. I thought it was a fictional place. No, turns out it's totally real. Destroyed in an earthquake. So I'll go and do some research on that and get myself up to speed. But nonetheless, been a fantastic race. Just to quickly go through your top 10 today, very quickly for the final time before we start to talk about the Richards Lobby, of which we are going to go through the results very briefly. Crow takes the result in race 2. Alexander takes P2, and P3 goes to Matthew Joynson. So now we're going to go to the standings for the Johnson Lobby, and this is how things will eventuate after round 2. Crow is out to a good lead with 364 points. That victory in race 2 doing him a world of good, and a world of good for Colin Racing Team too. Matthew Joynson in P2 in the standings, 350 points for him. Dean van der Zandt will fall down the table just a little bit to P3 for CP Motorsport, 320 points for him. Glenn Mead there, Big Bruce the Shark, as we love to call him. Mad Turtle Racing, 308 points. Close on his heel though in P5, it is Nielsen for Whiplash Motorsport. That's Monica Camilleri's team, 300 points for him. And Alexander there for Miku Driver Development, now in a very respectable shared, well, it looks like it's shared, but it's actually not in terms of points. 6th position. Then in 7th, not 6th, it's Aidan Sampson on 240 points for Diffusion Race Engineering. Wakefield in P8 there. Yes, I can do math, turns out. For Mash Spuds Racing, 238 points, hot on the heels of Aidan Sampson. DP Mario, 9th in. He's going to have 234 points to his name for Hasseldine Automotive. Chris White in P10, 212 points. And then we've got Robert Robinson, Matt Kutcher, Troy Britnell, and Williamson. There's Blake Williamson for Scarborough Motorsport, rounding out the last 4 on the grid. So those are your standings currently for the Johnson Lobby. We will be bringing you the updated standings for the entire team's title as well. But first of all, Andrew, I think it's time for us to take a quick look at the Richards Lobby. What do you think?
Let's do it.
Excellent. So, well, I tell you what, I've talked quite a lot. Would you like to take us through the qualifying results of Richards Lobby?
Sure, absolutely. We've got D. Ison there for Whiplash Motorsport taking up pole from Tony Griffin. Griffo, great result there for Gridline Racing to get second. Ben Churchill, Neon Imperial for Road Sick Racing rounds out the top 3. Then Corey Bagnall in P4, Pacheco in P5, D. Crook for CP Motorsport in 6th, S. Barlow for Black Rose Racing in 7th, Kane Foster for Juiced Motorsport in 8th from Hamilton, a privateer. I think that's Hammy on the bone there in P9. De Oliveira for Diffusion in 10th. Hasseldine in 11th. Ench in 12th. P. Rudd for Mash Spuds in 13th. Scarborough for Scarborough Motorsport in 14th. D. Digger, a privateer, in 15th.
Excellent. So that was your qualifying results for the Richards Lobby. Same race, same track, of course. Race 1 results looked like this. So Griffin was able to take the P1. Oh, excuse me. A couple of hiccups coming through on the stream, my fault. Gridline Racing there with Griffin takes the P1 in race 1, 100 points for him. Pacheco takes P2 and ends all the way up from the back of the grid. That's a mega drive back for the Mad Turtle Racing driver. 86 points he will take in the first one. Karma Foster takes P4 for Juice Motorsport and P5 to Bagnall for Hooncorp. So a lot of switch up of the grid here. I think there might have been some spiciness happening in the Richards Lobby in race 1.
Yes, there might have been. Yeah, but great result for Griffo there to bring home a win there for Gridline. He'll be very proud of that, I am sure.
Absolutely. So race 2 results look like this. Ben Churchill for Road Sick Racing takes the win. Griffin. So a double good result for Griffo here for Gridline Racing. P1 then P2 in the 2 races. Ben Churchill, though, doing very well there. I know how quick this guy can be in terms of the GT3 class. So he's done very well. That's also a familiar name from the TCR season as well. 100 points for him. P3 will go to Barlow for Black Rose Racing. Good to see them up the grid because Black Rose Racing are a very familiar name here at the MotorMotion E-Series Pacheco in P4, Bagnall in P5, Kalma Foster in P6 for Juice Motorsport, Cooke, Ent, Oliviera, Hasseldine, and Lewin, and then followed by Rudd. We've got some DNSs there, unfortunately, though, in race 2. Rudd, Hamilton, and Eisen, including Hill as well, all unfortunately having DNSs. So Hill, unfortunately, did not qualify, I believe, for the Mikuga driver development. He was not available.
No, he had a last-minute issue, so it was unfortunately a last-minute scratching. But I tell you what, Tony Griffin there, old Griffo has nearly done the last to first challenge.
Yes. That's right.
What an effort! That is fantastic that he's done that. We've got one of our mates who's got the dubious distinction of starting on pole for both races. Have a think about that, folks. How you would do that? So he did not have a very good outing. Love you, Spanny. Good to see you, mate. But that's something that you don't want to do. But Griffo to go and get 2 victories would have been absolutely amazing effort. To nearly pull off that last to first challenge would have. He must have had a stellar drive.
It would be, we'll have to go and look at maybe some replays at some point, because that would have been an amazing drive back through the field. I mean, he would have had to overtaken literally the entire field except for Ben Churchill, who obviously is starting a little bit further down the grid. Starting towards the top of the grid for the second race. I was able to get away nicely and pull a bit of a gap. But yeah, very impressive. So, I mean, just based on what we've seen there, Griffo clearly gets driver of the day.
Absolutely, without a doubt, and we don't even need to see the race to realise that. So that's that is some effort. But obviously, had the strategy, might have passed a few people in the pits, like we saw today. It can be done. With that fuel being quite expensive, the pit stops took a long time for some people, a little bit longer than they might have wished.
So here's the Richards Lobby standings, and I will give this pleasure over to you to run us through the final standings for the Richards Lobby, or the current standing, as I should say.
Well, that tremendous outing in the second round sees Griffo inherit the lead of the championship there from Pacheco for Colin Racing. Then we've got Bagnall in third, so a decent lead there to Griffo, but not a huge one. Then there's a little bit of a gap back to S. Barlow in fourth, from Churchill in fifth there, but they're actually equal on points. Then Kane Foster for Juice Motorsport. So those three are very close. Then it's a short gap back to D. Cooke in seventh, Ench in eighth, Hasseldine in ninth, Oliviera in 10th, down with 196 points. Then Digger, the privateer, just ahead of D. Iverson for 11th and 12th. 13th is Hamilton on 154 points from P. Rudd and Van Leeuwen, and poor Mick Hill yet to get off the mark.
Yeah, hopefully we'll see Mick Hill get involved in things at some point. But of course, family and work comes first, and the pleasure we have of racing around these fantastic circuits with our fantastic teams and friends and competitors alike is something that has to come second, unfortunately, in life. Nonetheless, we're going to go to our final slide of the evening, and that is the team's title standings. And this is the grid on the standings for the team's title. Colin Racing Team has had a massive improvement. They have gone right to the top with a big jump up, so 696 points for them. CP Motorsports close on their heels, though. Not as close, though, as Juice Motorsports is to them. So 643 points, 622 points. All three of those teams gaining positions in the team's title in round 2. Whiplash Motorsport will unfortunately lose positions. They were right at the top. They're now shared on points with the Diffusion Race Engineering, the Kiwi team, and the Australian team, both sharing 618 points in the championship. Mad Turtle Racing also slipping down the order at this stage. Unfortunately, 614 points for them, but it's still all to play for. Not yet any sort of big gaps really between the championship leaders there, or even between the top 10 teams. So 7th place goes to Gridline/Rushfire Racing, 606 points for them. They're actually up on the grid. Hooncorp and Mash Spuds Racing stay where they are, respectively 8th and 9th, but continue to raise points. Only 5 points separating between them, so that's a good effort from those two. T10 goes to Black Rose Racing, up on the grid, 520 42 points for them. Rotix Racing losing out, 531 points for them now. And Cooke Driver Development, unfortunately, still dropping down the order, sadly. Mick Hill will need to get back into the fray at some point and give you guys some points. But at the moment, dropping down 476 points currently. Hasseldine Automotive and Scarborough Motorsport rounding out the team's title, both of which have unchanged positions. So what an absolutely brilliant start to the Supercars series. We've got another 6 rounds for you, which is brilliant. 8 rounds of racing here in the season. And so we are just, literally, quite just getting started, which is absolutely excellent. You'd love to see it. So nonetheless, that is pretty much going to round out the stream. So before we go, we've got a couple of things, little bits of housekeeping to go through. Next week, we're still in Japan. Sorry, not next week. On the 19th of September, we will be going live on this channel for the Brock Lobby in Japan once again at the Autopolis short course, which is actually one of my favorites. I really do like it. It's very, very intense. We've been there before with several other leagues, and in this league, it's a great little track, and that's going to be a real challenge for everyone out on track. So make sure you join us live for the Brock Lobby on the 19th of September. There will be a delayed broadcast, potentially. We might have some announcements around that, because we've also got the TCR Cup Season 2 starting up reasonably soon. So if you want notifications about what's coming up in our schedule, you've got to do 2 things. You've got to like and subscribe. Actually, that's 2 things already. You've got to do 3 things. You've got to like and subscribe and join us over on the Facebook page for MotorMotion E-Series and join the paddock, where you'll get all the updates about what's happening for the teams, the drivers, and all that information. Of course, you can join us on www.motormotioneseries.wordpress.com for articles, information, analysis, and results. So make sure you guys get involved in that if you are not. So I think that's pretty much going to round things out. But Andrew, Scott, it has been an absolute pleasure. I've been waiting a long time to be in the comms box with you, and here we are. So the legendary Ando, been a pleasure, mate. How have you enjoyed yourself tonight?
Yeah, it's been great. It's been great to get back on board with you, and keep up the good work, mate. Everything you're doing is tremendous. We really appreciate it, and yeah, I hope you guys. I hope we put on a good show for you tonight.
I think we have. We've had a lot of great comments in the chat, so thank you everyone in chat who's been joining in. I won't name everyone in the chat at the moment, but thank you all so much. Really appreciate you joining us for this today broadcast. We will, of course, be back on I think next week for one of the delayed broadcasts, I think TCR season. Nonetheless, keep an eye on our social media accounts and channels for all of that information coming up. Brilliant, brilliant time tonight. That was some excellent racing from the Johnson lobby. Well done to all the teams and drivers for putting on such a good show. Of course, we here in the commentary box are absolutely nothing without a good bit of racing to talk about. So thank you all so much. We're going to leave the stream there, folks. So have a fantastic rest of your Saturday. Have a fantastic rest of your weekend. Wishing you the best of luck for next week. Stay safe out there. Take care. We will see you next time. Good night, and signing out here from MotorMotion E-Series, myself, George Cooke, and Andrew Scott in the commentary box. It's been a pleasure. Good night, good evening, and goodbye.